Okay, so if you visited my channel at any time recently, you probably noticed my channel art, the little picture of Kirby sitting behind a broken computer. My laptop is completely dead. At some point the fan became 100% clogged, the cooling fan, and the motherboard is pretty much completely crapped out. So I need a new laptop, can't work on new reviews until I do, and I need to shop for laptops at some point, and I haven't been able to do that because I've been applying everywhere for jobs. This video is coming from a relative's iPad, the YouTube Capture app, which I've never used before. Hopefully it works out. And I'm doing this because I saw Man of Steel recently, and I wanted to get this little video with my thoughts out while the movie is still relevant. Anyway, Ben, my pal, you probably don't want to watch this video because I did not like this movie. There were parts I liked, but this was bad. I'm sorry. Please excuse me if I look off to the corner a little bit. I made a little Microsoft Word document with my thoughts just because I want to make sure I hit all my bullet points. The big problem I had with this movie, the big problem was the entire second half of this movie is an action sequence. This is about how the movie goes. The first 20 minutes or so is a prologue on Krypton, which that prologue is really good. I really like that. The next 40 minutes or so is backstory, like Superman's origins growing up on Earth. I had problems with that, but I'll get to that later. The entire rest of the movie, all of it, is one massive action sequence that's divided into three separate action sequences with no breaks, no levity, nothing dividing them. You watch an hour of setup, and then you watch Superman punch stuff for like an hour and 15 minutes. And from the trailers and from the fact that it was written by Christopher Nolan, I was really expecting more of a story-based movie instead of... This movie is almost structured like Transformers 3, where you've got setup, and then you've got an action climax that goes on way, way too long. It's just not what I was expecting. And the action sequence... The first action scene where Superman fights two of Zod's goons, it goes on for too long, but that's pretty cool. Then they go to Superman destroying a spaceship, and then the final fight with Zod. By the time it gets to the final fight with Zod, instead of enjoying the fight with Zod because Superman punching Zod, it's really good special effects and it's really good action, I was bored because you've been watching Superman punch stuff for 45 minutes up to this point. It's like... If you just take the scene where Superman fights Zod and you watched it on its own, it would be really kick-ass. But the fact that you've been watching this Superman beat stuff up for almost an hour up to that point, I wasn't excited to watch the scene. I was just bored. And I swear there were people walked out of this movie during the fight with Zod. I'm not the only one who was getting tired. And having a movie that's got loads of action, that's in one extended action sequence, isn't inherently a bad thing. The Avengers did it, more or less. Star Trek Into Darkness did it, but those movies had an upbeat tone. They had levity to keep the action fun, even as the sequences of action and fun. Those movies had levity and an upbeat tone to keep the action fun. And Man of Steel's tone is so serious. There's no levity. You're just watching Superman punch stuff with a death serious tone, and it got so boring. I actually liked a lot of the first half of the movie, but the second half just drags on so long and was so dull to me that it completely killed the movie for me. And maybe the problem was with my expectations. Like I said, I was expecting a story-based movie, kind of an introspective look at Superman trying to find his way in the world, which is really not what this movie is. But that's just my thoughts. The structure of this movie, where it's an hour of build-up for a ton of action, it just didn't work for me. And the movie is a kind of deficient in the story department, too. The movie is basically a one-man show. Superman is the only arguably three-dimensional character, and that's not including Zod. There are there are very few supporting characters, and the supporting characters they have do almost nothing in regards to story. Like, people have been bitching about how Jimmy Olsen became Jenny Olsen for the movie. Jenny Olsen is on screen for a grand total of 5 minutes, and she doesn't even set eyes on Superman. Like, you could cut the Daily Planet, you could cut Lawrence Fishburne, Jenny Olsen, you could almost cut Lois Lane out of the movie entirely, and the script wouldn't change at all. The only thing that Jenny Olsen and the Daily Planet people do is when the city is being destroyed, Jenny gets trapped under some cement, and Lawrence Fishburne and some other guy, I don't know his name, rescue her. I think the entire reason that scene was put in there is because to show, like, Superman is making people better he's leading by example, just like he's supposed to. Superman hasn't interacted with any of these people. The city didn't even know that Superman existed until Zod started attacking. It's just, if they were going for the motif of Superman is making people better by leading by example, they failed at it. And like I said, you could probably cut Lois out of this movie and barely have to change a thing. Lois has maybe 3 dialogues with Superman the entire movie, and all of them are to spout exposition. Like, there is no relationship between Superman and Lois. Superman doesn't even meet the people at the Daily Planet. There's no relationship there. The only character that Superman has any kind of relationship with is the generic military guy, because he has to convince the people of Earth to trust him. And the only supporting character that I really liked was Russell Crowe as Jor-El. He kind of hangs around the entire movie as a hologram that walks around reprogramming Zod's ship. Russell Crowe is really good. I liked Jor-El, and he's pretty much the only memorable and good thing I liked about this movie. Anyway, the first hour of the movie is mostly set aside for telling Superman's backstory. And Superman's backstory, like when he was a kid, his childhood years, is kind of told in flashbacks that occur throughout the movie. It really feels, not only do this, I don't mind that the flashbacks skip around a bit, but it feels like there are chunks of the backstory that they skipped or they assume people already know, so they didn't show it. The big problem I had with Superman's time as a kid was Kevin Costner as Jonathan Kent. Every single line that Jonathan Kent spouts is, "You have to keep yourself a secret. You're going to change the world. If people found out what you can do, they'd lose their shit. You're going to change everything." It's like, is it too much to ask for one scene? Just one scene where this guy acts like an ordinary person, where his dialogue is something other than sound bites for the movie. Is it too much to ask for one scene that makes it look like Clark had something that vaguely resembled a normal childhood? And by the way, Pa Kent's death scene in the movie is freaking stupid. I won't spoil it here, but it's just dumb. But the big problem I had with the Superman's backstory is the movie kind of shifts around Superman's origin. I don't know much about Superman, but I think it kind of shifts around his origin story. The story of the movie goes something like this. He's raised on Earth, fully aware that he's an alien, fully aware that he doesn't belong. They really go out of their way to drive home the fact that he feels like an outcast, that he doesn't feel very connected to humans at all. They establish he's an alien and he's just kind of wandering around the planet lost and not knowing what to do until he finds a Kryptonian ship and learns about his heritage. Like, they set it up that he's just wandering around trying to find out something about his alien past. Like, he's only interested in the alien aspect of himself and not interested at all in, like, being a human or the human aspect of his life. The thing is, I don't have a problem with the movie exaggerating that Superman feels like an outcast. I do have a problem with the fact that the movie pretty much goes out of its way to show that Superman has no ties to the human race. So why does Superman fight his own people in defense of the human race when the writers have gone out of their way to show that Superman doesn't think of himself as being human? He is, in every sense of the word, in his own mind, an alien. And it makes no sense why Superman immediately decides to fight his own people instead of defend the human race when they've gone out of their way to show that Superman doesn't really feel like he fits in or has any ties to the human race. It just, with a rewrite or two, they could have made... What this movie needed was a moment where Superman discovers a kinsmanship with the humans. Like, he discovers some kind of tie to the human race, and that's supposed to happen with Pa Kent when that's supposed to happen with his parents when he's a kid, but Pa Kent was too busy giving speeches to get that down. And that's supposed to happen. Damn it, I'm gonna cut this part out later anyway. With a rewrite or two, they could have made this character arc make sense, where somewhere Superman discovers a kinsmanship with the humans, which is supposed to happen with Pa Kent and his parents, but Pa was too busy giving speeches throughout Superman's whole damn childhood. There should be a moment where he decides to side with the humans instead of with his own people, whom he's been longing to reunite with his whole life. There should be a moment where he discovers a kinsmanship with the humans and decides that he really fits in with the humans, and that he can fit in. Instead, he just decides to side with the humans out of nowhere, basically, and I really don't think the movie justifies that decision. It's like they go out of their way to show that he feels like an alien, and that he doesn't belong with the humans, and he knows that he feels he doesn't belong with the humans, and then he sides with the humans, like, without even thinking about it. They should have developed that aspect of the story more. Also, this is kind of just something that struck me as odd. Superman basically has no idea what to do with his life until he comes across an alien ship and a hologram of Jor-El tells him, "You are meant to become Superman and give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards." It doesn't feel like Clark becomes Superman because he wants to. It feels like he becomes Superman because his dad tells him to. Basically, the story arc of the movie is Superman wanders around the Earth, finds the alien spaceship, his father tells him to become Superman, and then he just becomes Superman because he has no choice, because Zod comes down to the planet and flushes him out. I just think he should choose to become Superman, not become Superman because he's told to, or because he's forced to. He should choose to become Superman. And one of the kind of subplots that goes through is, on Krypton, they had controlled births where each child was raised to serve one specific purpose, and Jor-El tells Superman, what if a child wanted to be something other than what society had in mind for him? He basically gives him this spiel about how Superman can choose his own destiny, become anything he wants, and in the very next sentence he's telling him he has to become Superman. It's like, you can do anything you want with your life, as long as you become a superhero. Anyway, the movie also has some plot holes. Like, when Zod comes down to the planet, he says, we want Superman, and you, Lois Lane, we want you too. Like, how did Zod know Lois Lane exists? How is there a Superman outfit on the spaceship that Superman discovers when the ship was launched there several thousand years before Superman was born? But the biggest and most inexcusable plot hole to me involves the destruction of Krypton. The prologue on Krypton has a very heavy-handed environmental message where it's like, the people of Krypton ran out of natural resources and started harvesting the planet's core, because that can't go wrong at all. But later in the movie, a very critical plot point is that the Kryptonians went to other planets and colonized other planets, and they had machines that could terraform a planet so that it was just like Krypton, so they could live there. But they abandoned the colonies when Krypton began running out of natural resources. So, Krypton starts running out of natural resources. You decide to shut down the colonies and just live on Krypton and harvest the planet's core. Move to one of the planets you colonized! You can terraform a planet so that you can live on it. Move to another planet! Don't shut down the colonies and decide to mine the planet's core, because there comes a point when the phrase too stupid to live applies, you know? And this isn't even something I noticed, because at the end of the movie, like I said, I was zoning out, because as the action just goes on and goes on and goes on, I just started zoning out, and I just couldn't pay attention and just was watching kind of like a blank stare. But this is something that a lot of people have been pointing out. A key part of Superman's mythology is that the people and buildings of Metropolis, the safety of other people, is more important to him than his own life. Superman pretty much levels Smallville and Metropolis during his fights with Zod and the other people. Like, you don't see him even try to save a single person until you get to the very end of the fight with Zod. I mean, the absolute very end. Like, he's chucking Zod through buildings, he's smashing pretty much every building they can find. It's like, where's the point where Superman actually tries to save people, where he has to find a way to put the fight on Zod on hold, or he has to rush to save people before going back to the fight? It's like, he didn't give a rat's ass about anyone that was in the buildings that he was demolishing during his fight with Zod. And at the end of the movie, we see several panning shots of Metropolis during the fight with Zod that pretty much shows the entire city's been demolished. It looks like an atom bomb's gone off. And then the end of the movie, where the movie ends with Superman getting a job at the Daily Planet, the city looks fine. Like, apparently Superman used his Great Wall of China repairing vision from Superman 4 and fixed the entire city overnight. Because the city looks fine, and it was demolished what was implied to be only a few days ago. I wanted to like this movie. I wanted so bad to like this movie, but I was bored by the action. The story was not all that great. It was really simple, and even as simple as the story was, it still managed to have holes and things that didn't add up and things that didn't make sense. This movie was I thought it was crap. And maybe my expectations were off. Maybe I just don't know enough about Superman to appreciate it, but I hated this movie. I liked the first half hour. I liked parts of the first hour. But by the end of the movie, I just was waiting for it to be over. This was bad.